This week on Asianet News Samvad, we join you from New York, the site of 9/11 tragedy, Ground Zero. We speak with immediate relatives of the fallen. We honor the brave men and women who rescued lives, and we console the families of the departed. Asianet News Samvad from 9/11 in New York. Spread over 8 acres, the 9/11 Memorial in New York is a place of remembrance and contemplation. In April 2003, an international competition was launched to choose a design for a permanent memorial at the site where the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center existed. The competition resulted in 5,201 entries from 63 countries. Finally, in January 2004, the design submitted by an Israeli architect, Michael Arad, and landscape architect Peter Walker, titled Reflecting Absence, was selected. The memorial opened on September 11, 2011, 10 years after the attacks. Today, the beautiful 9/11 Memorial has transformed New York. Today, close to 4 million people from all parts of the world visit the memorial every year. The memorial has 2 large pools, each nearly an acre in size. The pools sit in the footprints of the North and South Towers destroyed during the attacks. The pools contain the largest man-made waterfalls in America, each descending 30 feet and then again another 20 feet. The architect called it absence made visible. The names of the 2,983 people who were killed in the 2001 and 1993 terrorist attacks are inscribed on bronze parapets edging the pool. More than 400 white oak trees surround the pools, making it a place of tranquility. Next to it is the new One World Trade Center, also called the Freedom Tower. It is the tallest building in North America and the Western Hemisphere. The building has 94 stories. "9/11 Memorial offers a place for remembrance and contemplation. True to its design, it is absence made visible." We are today joined by Mr. Stanley Praimnath. He's a survivor of the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center. He was a banking executive and worked on the 81st floor of the South Tower. He's only one of 18 survivors from within or above the impact zone. Thank you for joining us today to share your story with Asianet News.
It's a pleasure for me to be here, sir. Okay. Thank you.
Tell our viewers what happened that day 21 years ago. How were you able to survive?
And what I saw in the corner of my eyes was fireballs falling from the sky from the other tower. So I walked to the ledge, the window, and I'm looking up because the first building was already hit. And I was in the elevator coming up and I did not have a clue what happened. So as I'm looking up, she came towards me and I said, look, tell me what is happening. And we didn't figure it out. Had I known that the first plane had hit the first building, chances are I would have ran out. So we didn't know anything. So I walked back to the desk, reached to the phone, called my boss, Peter Del Gracia is his name. Pick up the phone. He's not answering. I called his boss, Bob Militaglio. Bobby, pick up the phone. No response. I told Delise, the young lady I said, Delise, let's get out of here. So you ran out of the office. I work on the south side of the south building. Walk all the way down the corridor, the hallway that is, reached the elevator, went downstairs. And when we got out of the elevator or trying to get out, the security guard says, where are you going? I said, well, I'm going home. I saw fireballs falling from the sky from the first building. He said, no, your building is safely secured. Go back to your office. There and I'm wondering what to do. So I'm on the ground floor. Now, in that elevator, 18 other people, all the big shots, the head of human resources department, head of general affairs, the CEO, everybody was in there. And Delise and I, 20 of us, and I'm deciding what to do. At this point, Delise said, Stan, I'm scared. I want to go home. I said, well, take the rest of the day off. And I can hear from the elevator, how can you do this? We have an operation here to run. I says, no. I'm running the operation. She's going home. And I think in my heart, that was the best decision I ever made.
You were actually in the second tower. You saw flames go up in the north tower when the plane hit. And
that is correct.
You had the presence of mind to go down and along with 17 other people, walk back into life. Were you injured? Were you covered in ash? What was your situation?
Well, nothing happened to me. So we are going back in the elevator, back to the office now. One man stopped and got out in the office in front of me. And he walks into the men's room. And I never saw that man again. And I went back into the office and the phone rang. And a young lady from Chicago is telling me, get out. I said, get out for what? She said, Stan, you don't have the time. Please, please, please get out. Mm-hmm. And as I'm having this conversation with her, something caught my eyes. And I'm looking towards the Statue of Liberty. And there's a giant aircraft, green color, coming towards me, eye-level eye contact.
Wow.
The plane, as it came towards the closest 1,000 yards, as I can remember, the plane starts to tilt, and it's happening in slow motion. The plane came like this, starts to tilt, and I can hear that revving sound that the engine is making as it's coming closer, closer, closer. I dropped the phone, screamed, and dove under the desk. And the last thing I remember saying, Lord, I can't do this. You take over. And I don't know why I said this. Even if you beat me over the head today, I would never recall why I said it. But that's all I remember saying. And with the most thunderous sound, the plane smashed into the building. And the bottom wing took out the 79th floor, the top wing, the 82nd floor. And those were the 4 floors we had.
So now you have escaped this tragedy and you're back home. And then you're now hearing news that, almost 3,000 people lives were taken. They were killed. How did you feel?
The first couple of days, I couldn't recognize people and faces. I lost my mind, literally. I couldn't recognize the face of my wife and our 2 daughters. But as the week progressed, I started remembering things. And the first thing that crashed into my head, the thought crept in, was this really happening, or was it a nightmare?
Do you still recount that day? Is that guilt that you mentioned still with you, or have you overcome that?
Past 21 years, I've relived that moment. I've relived that day when God reached down in his mercies and let me live. And I always ask the questions, why all these good men? The unanswerable question, why, Lord? And I would never get the answer as, why not? But I relive that moment every night before I go to sleep. I can hear the cries of these people, and I can see the falling heroes. And then we're jumping over the bodies and running away. And I'm reliving that moment and telling myself, I live because of grace.
Do you go back to the World Trade Center site, the 9/11 memorial, the Freedom Tower? Every year, thousands of people gather there. They have ceremonies to commemorate the fallen. Have you gone back there? Do you go every year?
I have never gone back, but twice. But I never went back to the memorial ceremony. I feel in my heart that that's a very sacred place, a place where people, if going to work to provide for your family means doing something wrong, well, then we were all guilty. But I hold that place very sacred. But I went back only twice.
How has your life changed in the last 20 years or so ago? What major significant changes have happened?
Many changes have occurred in my life since that tragedy 21 years ago. And one of the biggest changes is I became a pastor, a licensed pastor. In my heart, I felt that I have to tell this good news of how God reached down in his mercies and let me live. So I became what they call a motivational speaker. So I will travel from churches, schools, colleges, government offices around the country, or wherever people invite me. And I go tell them this story of how I live.
This September 11th, 21 years of this tragedy, what message do you want the world to take from?
Never carry that hate into your heart. Bad men will do bad things. However, good men will show love. I may never understand who did it. I may never understand their motives behind it. But I can tell you, we can build bigger, better, stronger. However, we need to build our faith in God, who will protect us from all situations. So my message for the 21st infamous anniversary of September 11th is go out there and do good to other people. Spread love, not war.
We are joined today by Mr. Cherian Mathai. Mr. Cherian Mathai's brother, Mr. Joseph Mathai, passed away 21 years ago on September 11. He was 49. Welcome to Asianet News Samvad. Thank you. Every year we commemorate the lives of the fallen on September 11. At a personal level, what does September 11 mean to you?
Krishnan, it is a personal loss, as you rightly pointed out, but it has left an indelible mark because of the nature of the tragedy and the fact that I spent the previous weekend with him and the family at his residence in Arlington, Massachusetts. And more importantly, he was very close to me, because we are 5 brothers, he was the closest to me. And I always looked up to him for advice in times of need and other things. But more importantly, as I said before, the nature of the loss is such, it is very difficult to come to terms with his demise and his departure. People pass away, you come to terms with it over a period of time. I find it very difficult to come to terms with it even after all these years. In fact, it is the other way around. His absence is being felt more now, and I miss him much more than the earlier years after the death.
Mr. Joseph Mathai was 49. He had a stellar career. He was with Cambridge Technology Partners. His life was abruptly cut short. How did the family react to it? At that level, what does that loss mean to the family?
He had a lot of ideas, a lot of things that he was planning to accomplish. That came to a complete end because his career trajectory was actually advancing substantially in the prior years. So that was an actual loss. And more importantly, he left behind 2 small children and his wife, and that had an impact on the family. But I have to say that they have been able to overcome that quite well, remarkably well. They were able to address the challenges that faced before them, and they have come through quite well in their life. With regard to us brothers, naturally it was a big shocker for us.
Do you come here every year for Ground Zero when they commemorate the departed and honor the brave?
I come here every year, but not on 9/11. In the early years, for the first 5 years, I used to come during the September 11th, but then it became very crowded. There were a lot of, the security became a big issue. I prefer to come here when it isn't much crowded, so I can spend some time here in the, somewhat of a solitary moment and relive the past memories. But as I said before, his memory lives in me all through the day and the years of my life. So, but I come here just to see where he was lost.
What is the message for the world? What should the world take away from this commemoration every year?
Krishnan, as you said, every year there is a celebration of 9/11 at this location. The names are read. There is a moment of silence, whether it is in the New York Stock Exchange, in the public schools. The memory is relived. The significance of that would be, irrespective of all the campaigns or warfare or initiatives in whatever term various nation states use, it impacts an individual. That's a thing that are seldom thought of or remembered when major strategies are being developed and discussed. Nobody looks at the personal loss that happens at the individual level. I wish the decision makers, policy makers, and others who are actively involved in this kind of strategies should consider that human element. It is not just here in 9/11, but across the country, across the world, many people are having the same kind of an experience, maybe different, but again it comes under the overall umbrella of certain strategies or efforts to have certain vision to be accomplished somewhere. So that's the thing that is problematic. You know, when it happens somewhere else, people look at it as a collateral damage. When it happens to you, it is no longer a collateral damage, it is a real loss.
Mr. Mathai, we see terrorism acts, news of dastardly acts of terrorism happening every day in some part of the world. When you see and hear these events, how do you react? How do you feel? What is going through your mind?
These things happen across the globe. Whether you call it terrorism or other terminology, one has to look at the same thing that I spoke before, the human dimensions of these activities. When I hear about terrorism, I mean, it depends, how you look at this. Who is committing that particular act, it is termed as terrorism. If something else happens somewhere else, but with the net result of human lives being lost, it may not be construed or called as a terrorism. It may not be a terrorist activity at all. It could be an instrument of state policy. But the human dimension has to be looked into. When you look at it in terms of a toll of human lives, I mean, there has been a lot of terrorism activities since 9/11, before that, but there has been other interventions that result in human loss. So I don't look at it in terms of just what some people will call as terrorism, but I look at it as the net impact on human lives and what is the net result that it brings in to the policy that created or resulted in that event.
Next, we are joined by Mr. Sibu Nair, who is the Deputy Director of Asian American Affairs with the New York Governor Kathy Hochul's office. Welcome, Sibu.
Thank you, Krishna Kishore.
Let me start off by asking you, what does 9/11 mean to you? What are your personal memories of that tragedy?
Initially, I thought it was a trailer of a movie. This two huge building got hit by an aeroplane, it's collapsing. Then I started paying attention to those headlines. Then I realized one of the biggest landmarks in New York City is under a terrorist attack. It was painful to watch. The more and more I started learning, then I started making phone calls to friends, those who are in the US, mainly in New York City. Every time I think about that, it's very painful to digest the fact that this happened in the United States. Now I am being a part of this 9/11 commemoration committee in my town. We have a monument here, so every time we get ready to do this commemoration event, it's very painful. All those memories comes back, but it's hard to explain. It's hard to understand this happened in the United States. We hope that this kind of incidents never happen again anywhere, not only in the US, anywhere in the entire globe.
What message do you have to the families who were impacted by the tragedy?
Human beings should only speak language of love, acceptance, and leave the hate behind. This is the only way people of different cultural background, color, and gender can cohabitate under one roof.
Thank you, Sibu Nair, for joining us on Asianet News Samvad. Thank you for watching a special episode of Asianet News Samvad here from New York. We'll be back with another episode next week. Until then, goodbye.
If you like this video, please like, share and subscribe to our channel.